Welcome back, everyone. As I've been recording these videos on the American Yacht chapter reviews, and of course many of them are very, very brief, trying to stay under about 15 minutes, there's a lot of interesting little events and individuals that are overlooked by necessity. And so I want to go back from time to time and revisit some of those topics and try to tie them into the greater story of American history. So today I want to jump into what is known as the War of the Regulation and the Battle of Alamance. These events took place in North Carolina in the 1760s and the 1770s. And they're significant precursors to the American Revolution. In fact, some historians might even say that these were the first shots of the American Revolution, in the same way that maybe Bleeding Kansas was first shots of the American Civil War. Sort of indirectly related, but with some consequences that will grow from them. The Battle of Alamance and the War of the Regulation is going to foreshadow the larger conflict between colonists and British rule. So let's take a closer look at what happened and why this matters. By the 1760s, tensions were rising in the North Carolina backcountry. Small farmers, who made up the majority of the population, were feeling increasingly oppressed by corrupt colonial officials and wealthy landowners. They were burdened by excessive taxes and fees, and the colonial government seemed indifferent to their struggles. In fact, building large buildings, and everyone was profiting except for these backcountry farmers. At least that's the way it felt to them. Now, these grievances had led to the formation of grassroots movement known as the Regulators. And the Regulators were a group of backcountry farmers. They had sought to reform the corrupted practices of local officials. And this isn't going to be too terribly different from Bacon's Rebellion, which we'll probably pick up in a future video. These farmers had petitioned the government. They had sought for a redress of grievances, might be the words that they would use. But their pleas are ignored, so they take matters into their own hands when they're simply not listened to by their government. So the Regulators are going to demand lower taxes, fair legal systems, an end to the exploitation by local sheriffs and tax collectors. They believe that the colonial government was supposed to protect the common people and not just enrich the elite. So as tensions grew, so did the Regulators' action. And between 1766 and 1777, they resisted the authority of colonial government, refusing to pay taxes and disrupting court proceedings. And this resistance became known as the War of the Regulation. It wasn't a formal war, but rather a series of skirmishes and confrontations between the Regulators and the colonial authorities. Now, while the Regulators sought to avoid violent conflict, their frustrations would eventually boil over into acts of rebellion. In some cases, they attacked officials, and they even took over local courts. Meanwhile, colonial leaders in North Carolina will view the Regulators as dangerous rebels, and as a result, they will respond with force. By 1771, the colonial governor of North Carolina, William Tryon, Tryon, he had had enough. And he'd raised the militia of about 1,000 men to suppress the Regulator movement once and for all. And the two sides met on May 16, 1771, near Alamance Creek, and what would be known as the Battle of Alamance. Now, the Regulators will be outnumbered and poorly armed. They're no match for Lord Tryon's well-trained militia. And after a short but intense battle, the Regulators will be defeated. Several will be killed. The colonial government is going to swiftly capture and execute a number of leaders of the movement as well. So the defeat at Alamance will effectively end the Regulator movement, but the resentment and frustration that had fueled the Regulator movement, that didn't disappear. It didn't go anywhere. Many backcountry farmers continued to feel alienated by the colonial government. There was this discontent that would just continue to well up. That would be very similar to what we would see later on in places like Boston, with the Boston Massacre and, of course, the Boston Tea Party and some of the events like that. It would feed into the larger rebellion against British rule during the American Revolution. So what is the legacy, or are the legacies of the Regulators? Though the Regulators were defeated at Alamance, their movement was an important precursor to the American Revolution. I've kind of said that before. And the War of the Regulation would highlight the deep divisions between colonial elites and ordinary farmers, and would showcase the growing desire for fair representation and governance, the idea of being represented. And in many ways, the Regulators' fight for justice would foreshadow the much larger struggle for independence that would erupt just a few years down the road. So the issues of taxation, corruption, representation that they fought against, these are all the same issues that would drive the patriots, as we will call them, in, well, to be honest with you, less than 4 or 5 years into the future. So the War of Regulation and the Battle of Alamance, these are key moments in a growing unrest that leads us to the American Revolution. And while the Regulators lost the battle, their efforts helped to spark a larger movement for justice and independence. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this little short video has been helpful. Helps you maybe dive deeper into the subject, find something you're interested in to explore further, and also to help you understand that the war just doesn't start with the Declaration of Independence. It just doesn't start with the shots fired at Lexington and Concord. This is a revolutionary period, and it goes well beyond the 8-year saga of the American Revolution. So hopefully this is a bit of a deep dive that will help you, and I'll see you next time down the road. Give me a thumbs up if you think it's been helpful. Take care, and good luck on your test.